This is the Final Word T20 World Cup Daily with Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins. It is day one, the opening of a new dawn of the T20 World Cup. That means we're at the qualifying stage of the tournament. 8 teams trying to narrow themselves down to 4, trying to get into the main part of the group draw. Namibia had a very surprising result against Sri Lanka, and Netherlands had a very tight game against the UAE. We're standing here on Kardinia Park, not the one where they played, but Kardinia Park number two, next to them. Number 2 comes right after first, in Geelong, in the Victorian town of Geelong, Adam, and a place that is very famous in all of our life stories.
Yeah, when we had the chance to work with Visit Melbourne, Visit Victoria, we thought what a great thing this will be for us through the course of the World Cup, because we are proud Victorians and we both had history in not only Geelong, specifically in your case being an avid fan of Geelong Footy Club, and I came down here, I don't know how many times to watch Hawthorn play as a kid growing up, but more generally Western Victoria, Southwestern Victoria. We're going to spend a lot of time around here in the next couple of weeks. Geelong's a fabulous place, so I'm glad this is stop one.
This is stop one, and we tell people just normally that you should come and visit Melbourne and visit Victoria, so it seemed very logical that we should tell people in a professional capacity as well. Geelong is an hour down the highway or down the train line from Melbourne, so you fly into Melbourne, then you're in Geelong. It's the gateway to the Western District. It's like the heart of regional Victoria in so many ways. It's the second biggest city, but it's a very regional city.
Yeah, it's going to be a big part of the Commonwealth Games in 2026, which is being, I think, the opening ceremonies at the MCG, but beyond that, we're very much out in the regions, and Geelong, the stadium development here, this is my first time back to Kardinia Park since they've put up all the grandstands. It's going to be a capacity of 40,000 by the time they're done with stage 3, so it's a pretty significant bit of infrastructure behind us now, and it's only fitting that a world tournament would be able to start at a place like this, because fantastic part of the world.
So this is the place where we need to start off with our first 30-second summary of the T20 World Cup.
Good luck with this, Jeff. This was quite the game of cricket.
Yeah, it was. Let's just say, for a while, it looked like the Namibia script would go the way that it's supposed to go. They had 72 after about 12 overs, kind of on track for a middling sort of score, and then suddenly, 70 off the last 34 balls. And they set 163, which you'd think Sri Lanka would chase, and then whack, a wicket off the top, then another, 2 in 2 balls. Ben Shikongo setting the place alight, and it still looked like Sri Lanka might get there, and then the wickets kept tumbling. It was their left-arm spinner who came on, got a couple caught in the deep, and they ended up losing by 55 runs.
Yep, let's colour in some of the blanks there, because you're right, 55-run margin. It's a thrashing. And when you consider Sri Lanka, who won the toss and bowled, at one stage had Namibia 93 for 6 in the 15th over, it was a brilliant final thrust from the Namibians with the bat, with Jan Frelink making 44 run out from the last ball from 28 balls. And JJ Schmidt, a player we've talked about a little bit in the past, 31 not out, with a couple of sixes. So they took it big at the end. They made 57 runs from the last 4 overs. They went after all the Sri Lankan death bowlers, and that gave them a platform when it didn't look like they were going to get one. I was sort of thinking maybe 130, 140 would be a good result in the circumstances, but in the end they had more than enough, because, Sri Lanka just kept swinging. And Namibia, with a bit of big game experience from last year, remember that Namibia made it through to the final stages of this tournament. Well, not the final stages, the Super 12s, which is the next stage, the main draw, if you like. And they got to play big games of cricket against Pakistan, against India, against New Zealand, serious top-tier nations who they've had that opportunity to test themselves against 11 months ago. And I think it shows in a day like today, against Sri Lanka, by the way, who were Asia Cup winners, 4-5 weeks ago. They knocked off Pakistan in the final.
And who smashed up Australia a couple of months before that across all formats, really. I mean, they played really well. T20s, 50 over and test matches when Australia were visiting over there.
Yeah, I think that's right. So there's a broader, bigger picture piece around the format of this competition. May as well get into it now we've arrived on it, about whether this bit at the start constitutes the World T20 or the T20 World Cup. We've always been a bit sniffy about that, suggesting that if you want to play a World Cup, just let all the teams play each other. Yeah. I reckon Namibia is a case in point with that, because I don't suspect, look, put it this way, in his corresponding fixture 11 months ago, Sri Lanka thrashed Namibia.
Yep.
But now they've got a bit more about them, and they're still in their window, I suppose, that generation who've been coming through, who've won or been involved at the top of the ICC Associate Nations competitions for like 5 or 6 years now. It's not an overnight sensation or anything like it. And yeah, they were superb with the ball.
Well, I think what really struck me was how organised and professional they were almost all the way through. So they lose a couple of wickets early when they're batting, and then they don't panic. And then Gerhard Erasmus, the captain, steadies it. And then, as you say, Smits and Freeling come in at the end and score more quickly. But then with the ball as well. So they rely so much on David Visa, or have in the past. He gets the first wicket, top edge hook shot. But then it's Chinkongo coming in and just bowling the house down.
What a way to start. Double wicket maiden to get his competition off the mark. I mean, he played in that comp last year, but he was a member of the squad. So again, it's about, I think he played one game against Pakistan. The rest he was sort of warming the bench wearing the fluorescent bib. And just
he's
sort of being part of a World Cup before. Like, I know that this is his coming out party today, so to speak, but he's kind of been around this environment once before.
And he's a proper Namibia product. He's been playing, he was playing under-19s for them as far back as 2016 when he was first wearing Namibia colours. So he's a homegrown player in that way. The first wicket gets drilled down to mid-off and gets caught, slightly fortunate sometimes when a player skies a shot. The next one's just a proper nick behind. And then there was another one a couple of overs later where he draws the edge and it goes just by the keeper. So and that's the point where Sri Lanka are 3 down. And there's always a stage when a less fancied team is in a good position against a more established team, and then the opportunity slips away. And that was the point where I thought, well, this is where it's going to happen. There were a couple of run-outs they might have had that were fumbled. There was a slightly tricky one where Rajapaksa ran into Freeling, who was trying to pick up the ball and run him out, and thus the bowler wasn't able to run him out, and that could have been an obstructing the field sort of appeal as well, but that wasn't appealed for. And so I thought those chances have been there. They haven't been taken. And then it was after that they flipped the switch, and it was Freeling as well with the ball this time who got the first wicket to get things going, and then Schultz, the spinner, who bowls exactly that kind of left arm filth that gets people out. Like he comes between the umpire and the stumps. He bangs it into the pitch almost, and he was getting unusual bounce for a spinner, which meant that a couple of big shots get skied into the deep, and it's Rajapaksa and it's Hasaranga, the two biggest hitters in the Sri Lankan team, who both hole out on the boundary. And from that point, Sri Lanka are pretty much playing for net run rate. Yeah,
I think Rajapaksa, I read in the build-up to the tournament, he's the only player in the Sri Lankan team that's got a strike rate in excess of 130 over the last 2 years. So he and Hasaranga can do it, and Schultz gets them both. And the first one, I know it looks filthy in isolation watching the replay, but he saw Rajapaksa coming. On the commentary on television, it says, lovely piece of footwork, because it was, but the timing wasn't there because Schultz nailed it down a little bit quicker. As for the Hasaranga top edge, I mean, we've seen him in domestic cricket in the last couple of years. The fact that he was so highly sought after in the IPL auction this year, it isn't just because he's a very aggressive wrist spinner who attacks the stumps. It's because he has the ability to come in at 6 or 7. Dasan Shanaka, the captain's another, and they did keep swinging all the way down to the end. They tried to, I think they probably realised about 2 wickets too late that net run rate could be a big factor in this group. Now that Sri Lanka have lost, and in all probability they will bounce back. They are the full member nation. They are the side that's won the Asia Cup, and it's conceivable that Sri Lanka won't have their destiny in their own hands if results don't go their way. Because when you get bowled out, net run rate doesn't help you out.
Well, exactly. And they can still get through because 2 teams get through, but maybe that means they're scraping through second. Maybe that puts them in a really tough group should they qualify.
Well, the Asia group, I'm sure you caught up with this, but it'll be India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka.
If they make it through
if they get second. I mean, it'd be a very unusual set of circumstances. And if Windies go first in the other group, it could be 5 pretty sort of senior nations in one group, and with the other group, Australia, England, New Zealand, with perhaps Holland or Ireland sneaking through in the other spot. Or Zimbabwe, that's right.
Yeah, so we should come to the UAE and Netherlands game, which ended up being a very close one. Can you tell us about it in the space of 30 seconds?
Oh gosh, I feel like I'm ill-equipped to do so. It was a tight game though. The UAE batted first. They elected to bat. They made 111 for 8 by the time they were done, but they only made 20 runs in the final 6 overs. So they lost 5 wickets along the way at the end. So despite laying a foundation, Mohammad Wasim making 41 from 47, it looked like they were going to battle, and indeed they were battling. Holland got off to a good start. In reply, they weren't galloping, but they were going steadily. They only lost 1 wicket in the power play. It felt like they were going to cruise towards an easy victory. And then the intervention of Junaid Sadiq, who takes 2 wickets in 1 over, should have been 3 if not for the missed opportunity from his captain, Rizwan, at cover. It should have been 3 wickets in an over. The sting went out of it a little bit, and the Netherlands sneak over the line with a ball to spare to win by 3 wickets.
Yeah, they were just sort of ticking away those last 20 runs or so. 1 here, 1 there, 1 here, 1 there, at a runner ball, which was what they needed. But that moment, I mean, that Junaid Sadiq over suddenly the whole thing came alive.
Yeah.
And I mean, I haven't seen a celebration that good since Imran Tahir. The second one, both deliveries were terrific. So he gets Ben Cooper, LBW, and then just goes right through Rolf van der Merwe, like hooping in swinger. I mean, it didn't hoop, but it just swung that little subtle bit that was enough. Bang, base of middle and leg stumps, and off he went, Junaid Sadiq. Both arms spread wide, doing the 747 down the runway thing, and ended up down around deep mid-wicket or deep cover by the time he'd come to rest.
Yeah, and they're the players they really need, the Netherlands. I mean, in the case of Tom Cooper, I mean, he's not played for years. Spasmodically since 2016, of course. He played in the World Cup in 16, but hasn't been available an awful lot with his domestic commitments with South Australia. And then Roland van der Merwe, who's the next man that he knocks over. I mean, this is a guy who has been such a clutch player for Somerset and has that experience being an international with South Africa before he qualified with the Netherlands. And even Colin Ackerman, who was the fourth wicket to fall, so the previous over in that sequence. He's been a mainstay at Leicester for a number of years, and we've seen him be an outstanding cricketer for the Netherlands. So that was the point where you're like, well, if those big three go in quick succession, how are they going to sneak through? And in comes young Pringle, son of Chris, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who was dropped from his second delivery.
Well, I also really liked that he was working it entirely in singles, which I think could be called a Tim Pringle from now on.
Yeah.
Just work it off the pads for a Tim Pringle.
Let's do it in singles. Yeah, so he had some support, I mean, towards the very end as I consult my notes. It's been that kind of day with lots going on. So he had... as now I lose my spot. That's right, Scott Edwards, who's won the Ryder Medal before for Richmond in club cricket in Melbourne, and Logan Van Beek. I always think of James Van Der Beek from Dawson's Creek when his name comes up. Van Beek has played for New Zealand as recently as this year. So, you know, that and I don't criticise them for this, but the Netherlands have been savvy about the way they've pulled together their squad for this tournament. But Edwards, who's the captain, you'd expect that leadership from him at the peak of his career, and nudged them to the line, and some really good running at the end as well. There was a chance for Rizwan, the captain, to execute a run out in the last over to redeem himself for the drop catch, but missed by millimetres, and that was enough.
It was a tough one. It was an underarm across the body trying to hit one stump on the dive sort of thing, and then a couple of balls later there was a direct hit from deep mid-wicket as well. But
that's right, yeah.
They were just home again. So, yeah, the UAE, I mean, they didn't deserve to defend 111 at the start of the innings, but in the middle there was that point where they could have, and you just wonder if he'd hung on to that catch, it would have been 3 wickets in the over for Junaid Sadiq, who bowled beautifully. But he'll have to look for his next opportunity.
I love the fact that the Rattler's going off behind us here. That's probably going all the way down to Warrnambool right now. If you're on the train coming from Melbourne through Geelong, you go through Birregurra, where my parents are, where I got about 2 hours sleep after getting off the flight last night. The lights have gone off here at Cardinia Park.
Warn Ponds, I reckon that train's going to.
Warn Ponds to Winchelsea, that road upgrade, the dual carriageway. I remember that from my days in politics. It was a big political issue way back when.
Yeah. We'll be shooting in daylight some of the time, actually, for the next few days.
Well,
we're not tonight.
Well, when the competition's in Hobart, Jeff and I will go somewhere else in southwestern Victoria, indeed a couple of places, and give you a taste of why this is such a lovely part of Victoria and a part of the world more generally. Some other observations on the day. Ben Jones made this point from CricViz. Sri Lanka bowled too full because they tried to play the ground. It is long straight here, so long that they've carved off, but it's very, as we know at Cardinia Park, Narrow wings. It's brought unstuck many a visiting team here over the journey.
I don't know how to deal with the the thin side of the ground.
So because of the thin sides on both sides, as it's set up with the pitch running kind of not the way you'd expect it necessarily to run with that in mind. But anyway, let's not reflect on that. It is running east-west. So, sorry, north-south, as it should be. But still, when you look at it, you're like, well, maybe the pitch could have done to it what they did at Eden Park all those years ago in Auckland and spin it around and have the deeper pockets. But what it does have is a very long straight boundary. So Sri Lanka tried to bowl fuller, and in that match-defining partnership in the final 5 overs for Namibia, they were able to play brilliantly down the ground. They only hit 2 sixes. They did mostly along the carpet, so they were able to play the game pretty well. And one more other point, it's cold. I can't believe you're still in the shirt sleeves. If you're playing cricket in mid-October in here in Victoria and in Tasmania, where the groups
it's going to be even
move tomorrow,
tougher in Tassie, surely.
It's going to be a different competition to last year in the UAE. And I don't think we've really thought too much about that. The fact that it's in Australia, we're thinking, well, Australia, UAE, hot countries. It's not hot this time of year. There might be hot days. There might be hot cities. When they go to Perth, it could be very different to how it is in Geelong and Hobart. But I reckon that'll be part of our conversations as we work through this first week.
Hall of Fame, the most final word moments of the day. I mean, the Junaid Sadiq over, I think, deserves a Hall of Fame nomination just for itself. And and the drop catch. There wasn't a missed hat trick there because it was wicket, dot, ball, wicket, other ball. Can't remember what happened in between. I think they were dots. Wicket, dot, and then drop. So it could have been 3 and 5 had he been able to pull things together.
Yeah, I've got a couple of bits and pieces here. Jan Nicole Lofty-Eaton took an absolutely brilliant catch to get rid of Hasaranga. We talked about the wicket ball from Schultz, but it was blowing a gale and he was underneath it, and he wasn't underneath it, had to adjust and dive forward to stick the landing at a clutch time. I reckon if they put down that chance and Hasaranga is still there with Chanaka, then maybe they find a way to get back into the game. If they were chasing, say, 50 off 5 at the death with those two in, it feels a lot different to the pretty agricultural way that Sri Lanka then went about it with, they had, 5 guys caught off top edges and a run out too.
An entire burger chain.
Yes,
caught
exactly.
off top edges. And their run of fielding was so good through that sequence. They caught everything.
Yeah.
They produced a run out. They were
Two good
terrific.
catches and a run out in a row. That's what it was that really made sure they were going to win the game.
I just want to nominate the kid in a Sri Lanka shirt. That was when a 6 was hit during the Sri Lanka innings and he was jumping up and down. Sri Lanka shirt and a Melbourne Stars hat. And I was like, that's a new generation of cricket fan. That's a modern phenomenon. As passionate about Marcus Stoinis in green as he is about wanting to Hasaranga in blue.
And what about young Ayan Khan on the afternoon or the evening he's had for the UAE? So he got Ackerman out, 16-year-old, his first wicket on this very big stage.
Just before the Sadiq over where
that's right.
That got them back into it.
But he went viral an hour earlier when he got out for 5 and he tripped over when walking back off the pitch over the Toblerone and went A over T. So he's gone viral for the wrong reasons, then backed it up, and again a good, really impressive wicket celebration from the kid as well. So one to watch, Ayan Khan.
People are very simple, aren't they? Fart jokes, hilarious. Someone falling over, hilarious. Someone falls in a hole, hilarious. As long as it happens to someone else. I think that's it for us today on The Final Word T20 World Cup Daily Day 1, which is presented to you in association with Visit Melbourne. You can plan your Melbourne moment at visitmelbourne.com.
Don't forget to plan your. It says here. Don't forget to visit visitmelbourne.com. Visit Victoria, the website. It's all there at your fingertips, and start planning your journey to this.
Or just drop us a thing in the comments and ask us where to go. We'll tell you.
We'll sort you out. This has been the first Final Word Daily, fresh off the plane, straight out to Gdynia Park, down the freeway. Here we are. We'll do this every day of the tournament. Adam Collins, Jeff Lemon for Visit Victoria. Ta-da.
See ya.